Hello, dear listener. I have something truly special to share. It's an exclusive invitation to join me in Mexico for an intimate and luxurious 3-day retreat along the beautiful Pacific coast of Zihuatanejo, taking place the weekend of the spring equinox, March 18th through the 20th. There's also an optional day to stay through the 21st for some special ceremonies that are happening in the area for the equinox. But the retreat itself is the 18th through the 20th, really an opportunity not to be missed. And I'm offering one lucky listener a discounted ticket on this weekend that I've just been loving into being actually for several years now as COVID and, everything. But when we conceived of building this place, our home down here, it's really what we envisioned, bringing people down here for retreats, for trainings, because we felt and we knew that this space was special. And as people keep coming down and we keep getting the feedback, how magical it is, we want to share it in a really intentional way. Be working with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, the metaphors of the season. We'll set sight on a new vision for our mothering journey and creating a deeper connection to self and Mother Nature. So to win a discounted ticket, rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts. Screenshot it and DM it to me on Instagram at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. And remember, the most important thing to mother is yourself. Give yourself permission to take a retreat this year. And besides, who said mothers can't go on a spring break? I'll see you there.
This is a Soulfire production. Welcome to Mother. No, it's Mother. Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time we rewrite the Mother Code. Welcome to episode 34 of the Mother podcast, season 2 of Rewriting the Mother Code. I'm Dr. Gertrude Lyons, and I feel very moved, blessed, excited for this episode. I have the privilege of interviewing, being with, and having on the show Nora Shepard. And it's a vulnerable episode. We're celebrating bringing to the forefront and focus on Pride Month. And what does that mean? And what does that mean to me? But more so, what does it mean to someone like Nora in the queer community? How do we self-parent? How do you self-parent in the community? What does it look like to rewrite your own code? And Nora's coming out journey that is so beautiful. And when we have the opportunity to look at it, from the Rewriting the Mother Code lens, just illuminates so much, so much about our life journey, but then so much particularly about her journey as a bisexual woman and what she deals with, thinks about, has confronted and is looking at for herself going forward, particularly around belonging. And what does that mean? What does it mean for any of us? But particularly, there are some really raw and real aspects to being a bisexual woman, and where and how does belonging happen, and what does it look like? And I know for me, this was a beautiful, and I feel like a privilege, to have this opportunity to be with Nora, and also, perfectly honest, uncomfortable. I feel a little bit like, kind of a year ago, and venturing into, what does the anti-racism movement mean to me? Black Lives Matter, everything, the unrest that was ignited this time last year, and found myself in new territory, which I think is so good. And I'm grateful, for the opportunity with Nora to explore and to be with and to notice my own feelings as she was sharing. And as I was questioning, what could I ask? What should I ask? And she has allowed me to go on a whole deeper level of exploration for myself around my own journey of coming out as an authentic woman, in general, but also not trying to equate my experience to hers in the queer community and what that actually entails or means. And at the same time, still relate for myself. So that's just a piece I want to add for, what this has meant to me and what it does mean to me to have guests like Nora to explore. And I think all of us in this exploration in any arena that, isn't our norm or don't even know we have discomfort with until we start digging in, that we're all on this journey. We're all brothers and sisters, keepers, and I think have a responsibility to explore any areas and arenas in our lives that I know I have privilege not to, and not to have to dig in and look at the fears, the dangers, and what someone like Nora or someone in the queer community is up against. But where can I learn for myself? Where can I be an ally, support, all of that? It's all, new and beautiful. And I hope this exploration with Nora illuminates new things for you and gets you thinking and exploring as well. So let's dive in. Nora, I can't tell you how honored, excited, blessed I am to have you on the show today. Thank you so, so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Particularly what we're highlighting in this episode is the fact that it's Pride Month and the exploration, what does that mean for individuals that are experiencing it from a personal perspective, to those who want to support the month, everything that it means and emulates and the potential for it. We want to really, have focus this month to dig into that. So thank you for bringing yourself into this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this because I think, your message of parenting yourself and learning how to soothe yourself and parent yourself and rewrite your own mother codes is so relevant to this month. And I can relate to it a lot as a member of the queer community of needing to write my own path. So I love this conversation. I'm excited to dig in.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to share you with our audience and have you, in whatever way feels right for you or what, comes to mind, not in any scripted sort of way, but just about your journey, that might include your coming out journey, but, your journey and who you are in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, the first person I ever came out to was one of my friends in college, and I came out to him when I was 19. And I had known for a while that I was interested in women as well. I identify as bisexual. So I had known for a while, I'd only dated men, but I had known that I was interested in women, but I was really scared to come out, which is so interesting because I have a very understanding family. Very liberal, very progressive, and it was still really scary to come out because we all put ourselves into these boxes, right? And claim these identities. And I think it can be really powerful. And today I take a lot of great pride in identifying in this way, but it can feel really limiting as well. It feels like I'm putting myself into a box. It feels like I'm leaving this old life behind, and I couldn't possibly predict how people would react. So it was really scary. And I remember coming out to my friend Connor, and he said, okay, cool, great. Are you still you? Then we don't have a problem. And I was like, that's it? You don't have anything to say? And he's like, no, I really don't. So he was a good first person to come out to. I didn't come out to anyone else until probably 2 years later. He was the first person I came out to, and then it was a slow burn over the next several years. And I think a pretty classic. The people who knew me best were the last people to find out. I started by telling strangers, if I met someone, I'd really casually throw in that I went on a date with a girl last night or what have you, just to kind of test the waters. And no one cares if that's the first thing they know about you. It doesn't matter if it's something new. Then I started to tell my friends and my family, and my parents were the last ones to find out. And I was so scared to tell my parents, and they were totally fine too. Everyone was fine. I have a very, very fortunate story that I was really accepted. I know that not everyone in the queer community is so lucky, but I mean, in a nutshell, I think that is that. I will say I struggle at times because I've never brought a girl home. I just have happened to get in serious relationships with men over the years. And sometimes I feel illegitimate at times where I'm maybe I'm not really part of the queer community. And so that's something I think that I've grappled with, that everyone knows that I'm out, but few people have confronted it in a real way. Some people have met the girls that I'm dating, but I've been out for probably 5 years now, and I'm still grappling with that in between phase of, am I legitimate or am I not? But in a nutshell, I would say that's the story.
Thank you so much. And I know there's so many layers, of what you're bringing to the forefront that is so vulnerable and so beautiful. Our human journey, in general, and what each of us, you used a word, and I don't know if you intended, what was that? Scrapple? Did you say scrapple?
I
Or
don't
did you
know.
mean grapple? It sounded like you said scrapple.
I probably meant grapple.
I don't know. I thought it was.
Scrapple.
I do too. I thought it was actually scrappy and grapple, and I don't know. There are different things
Let's
that
make
were.
it a thing.
Let's make it a thing. But we'll certainly quoted by you, but on my show.
I love it. I am obsessed with it. That is what I will be using that word from now on.
Well, and some things that were standing out to me, Nora, as you just shared were, gosh, despite having what I already know is a very open, could probably, if you were to put money on it, bet that your parents would be accepting. They're the last to know. And I think, as you generalized at the beginning around reparenting ourselves and, aspects of rewriting the mother code, but was still something wired in there that had you question that, question it. But I think maybe even, the fear of the loss of any favor with them is really significant, and I think you're bringing that to focus so powerfully with this. And even though you could mount certain evidence of them being, very much on your side, we still have this little kid part of us like, yeah, but what if this one, they don't, what if finally I'll have done the one thing, that has me lose not just favor, but, as little kids, that wiring is like, abandonment of loss of care, protection, like life. So I don't want to minimize what the significance of that is. And, I think you being aware of that, for yourself and to have compassion that, of course, that would, little Nora would be scared to bring something that you just don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for reflecting that back. I think that that's true. I think we want to be safe. And what I'm realizing lately, and I think has really come to light as I've in my coming out journey, growth can feel like loss. Healing can feel like loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, it didn't feel like I was gaining an identity. It felt like I was losing one. It didn't feel like I was adding to this community. It felt like my parents were losing their straight daughter. And that is, I think, a mindset shift, right? Of the fear-based thinking versus abundance-based thinking, right? My parents are going to love me no matter what. That I think is definitely a big part of it, is this fear-based thinking when you go on this growth journey. And whenever you become more authentically you are going to inevitably shed some safety and shed pieces of you. And even if that is the right thing to do, that's incredibly scary because you're leaving some of that comfort behind. And I think that was, as I was facing this, do I or do I not? It's like, well, I'm not really dating a girl, so I don't need to, right? That's what went through my head. I'm like, I'll make them deal with it when I really get serious with someone. And at a certain point, it felt like I am lying to them. I am robbing them of the chance to know their daughter as I am if I don't tell them about this part of myself. Even if they never meet a girl that I'm dating, it's still who I am. So that was, I think, the journey that I had to go on. So I think you're spot on.
Well, I love how you're personalizing it and deepening it for yourself because, we take risks when we show up as our authentic self, and when we're kind of living in certain cultures or environments, of what's like normal, then those people that knew me as this does also mean we may lose people. Right. Mm-hmm. But what's the bigger cost? Because as you were saying, you're rationalizing well, I don't have to confront this. I don't have to tell them this. But there were two things. One, you had parents who you felt pretty secure that they would approve, but there's still that little kid that might. But you probably also knew people in your sphere that it was likely that they might not, or wouldn't. And am I going to risk myself and my authenticity, my integrity? And like you said, then those people miss out on fully me, but I miss out on fully expressing myself, reflecting myself, fully as the woman I am, as the person I am, as this individual that's, out there in the world. And that, I think, is the cost, right? We do have to sometimes pay a price to be ourselves, but then we get to look at those relationships. I mean, if people fall away, then we get to look at well, what was that relationship anyway? If they're not, with me, it doesn't make it any less painful or challenging, but there are just truths and realities that come to the surface when we bring out these things that we've been afraid to and share parts of ourselves. Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women. And coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat, getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if that idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
A 100%. I want my parents to love me so much, right? Like, I want my parents to be proud of me. And I think that that's a really common thing. Everyone craves their parents' approval to some degree. And I was pretty secure that they were going to be okay with it. But here's the interesting thing. I knew my parents were going to love me, and they're not homophobic at all, but I didn't want them to love me for me or love me despite this, right? I wanted them to love all of it already. And that's a heavy ask for someone to already have unlearned everything that they have grown up with. And they did completely accept me and, all of that. I think I had to step in, though, to this model of parenting myself and accepting that, like, I'm going to choose this path for me. Like, I am stepping into this thing because it feels really authentic to my journey. I had to release some of the expectation that my parents were always right. And that they, even though I know that they want what's best for me, I know that to my core, I still had to, if I was going to step into this thing, recognize to some degree and shed some sort of belief that I needed to be the one to carve my own path. And they followed, thank God. But if they hadn't, that is the fear of, like, as you say, like, the cost of stepping into yourself. And some people aren't going to follow. And I, still get questioned. I think being bisexual is an interesting identity inside the queer community as well. It's a really interesting journey of overcoming what you want your parents to think about you and shedding that in order to step into this new relationship with both yourself and with them.
Yeah. I love that you just said that, like, the new relationship, like, it, not to deny it will be different, but that exploration can be really beautiful and cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
and not always comfortable, and it can be hard and it can be messy. And as you were saying that, I was curious, like, with all of the awareness of, like, excuses or reasons you put it off, I'm imagining that there was some self-parenting, or mothering of yourself you did to actually take the step. Sometimes we're conscious of it. Sometimes we're not. Sometimes we, have really conscious ways we do that. But now we can look back and say, yeah, I would say it was this. Is there anything you can say about that?
That's such a good question. I think part of what I said before was part of it, of starting to test the waters and share it with strangers, because there was no stake in the game. I just casually, I was like, I wanted my coming out to be not a thing. Like, I wanted the world to just kind of know. And I didn't want to make it a big deal. And so I started to tell strangers in a very casual way, oh, I went on a date with this girl last night. And that would be all I would say. And I would kind of gauge the reaction. And strangers rarely cared. Sometimes I would get like a double take. And then I would start to tell some of my peripheral friends, and I would tell them in the same casual way and like gauge their reaction. And then I told it to my close friends and then my brothers. And again, I came out in like the same way to all of them, which is just like, so I went on a date with a girl last night, and gauge their reaction. And as I got closer into my inner circle, they'd be like, what? What do you mean? Can you say more about that? And then my parents, I actually did tell them I am bisexual, and it was a moment. And I think that was part of it. I think that was over the course of a year and a half. And I was with every person gaining the confidence that I needed to tell the world. And I'm glad, even though I'm I wish, I'm not even going to say that. I'm not even going to say that I wish I had done it earlier, because by the time I did it, I was totally secure in who I was. And I had been going on dates with women for years. And I think that was a big part of the self-parenting journey. I also journaled a lot whenever I felt like I was feeling scared, or it was probably a period of a month and a half that I was building up the courage to tell my parents in a really intentional, active way. And I would almost do it, and then I would pull back. And there was a lot of journaling happening in that time, and a lot of running happening in that time. And I think those are all examples of ways that I was definitely self-parenting myself during that time of my life, where I was, with every action, getting a little bit more confident about the path that I was carving, that no one else was able to carve for me.
I love that. I think it wasn't like you sat down and said, here's my plan, I'm going to do this. And I love that, because that was your intuitive wisdom, right? You might have read in a book somewhere along the way, here's a way to do it. And I'm going to follow this. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not where this came from, for you. And you carved and set out on a journey in a way that, to me, it makes a lot of sense, right? If you're going to climb a big mountain, you get in shape, right? And you get in shape, and being able to kind of experience different reactions, notice the different feelings that came up when you got different reactions. And, you were building, muscles on how to be with yourself more and more with them. And that's, a big thing that we talk about, right? And Rewrite the Mother Code is, especially in the developmental model, right? We're all hunger for approval, for affirmation. It's part of our development, to do that and to tend to ourselves in that hunger. Then the most important person we need to continually affirm is ourselves, right? So you were, we talk about it as we're just wondering what everybody's reactions and how it's going to be in the world. But really what we're doing is working our own, internal unfinished business with it. Because most of the time they're just projection screens, right? They're, the parts of us oftentimes that have had these different judgments of yourself. And we then can kind of expect or think that that's how other people. But the word that keeps coming up for me as you're sharing is you built more and more unconflicted consciousness, for yourself. And, got stronger and stronger, where as the relationships were more meaningful and the potential costs were higher of how they responded, you had, more strength and clarity in your choices.
You said so many things that resonate. And I think as we all yearn to be loved, and that's a universal human yearning. I think that is probably, and I'm not going to speak for everyone in the queer community, but definitely for me was the one most at odds, most craving to be called out, right? I mentioned this earlier. I think being bisexual is a really interesting part of the LGBTQ community, and every experience is different. But I will say for mine, and I think that the other people who identify as bisexual can relate, who I've talked to, is this feeling of not being queer enough to be in the queer community and not being straight enough to be in the straight community. So there's this feeling of, if I step into this authenticity, am I going to have anywhere to belong? That's what kind of goes goes through your head. And it's like, if I'm dating a man, I'm straight. And if I'm dating a woman, I'm gay, but I'm both, and both are always true regardless. And now I can say that, but that's still something that I kind of grapple with, is this in between of the community. And so to your point of this yearning to be loved and to feel belonging, I think is absolutely the yearning that I didn't have language for it at the time, but was at odds, and was why it was so scary to come out. And I think a lot of queer people can probably relate to that, because that's the yearning that you want to belong to you. Ultimately, you have to mother yourself. But of course, we want to belong to other people. And I guess, as I've learned, there's community out there for every single person. You just have to show up authentically you. But it's hard. It can be really hard.
Yeah. No, I felt really tender, Nora, as you shared about that, because, I ultimately think our belonging is our choice, and we create it. And, we have a lot of authorship in just choosing to belong wherever we are, right? In any given moment. But it doesn't mean there aren't, then feeling that and experiencing that's a whole nother story, right?
and it's, are you belonging as your authentic self?
Yeah.
Is the other question.
Yep. And, if I am showing up like fully as me, my gender, my sexual orientation, like where does that fit in? And like, why is that a factor in my belonging, and how am I creating that? How do, the different communities create that? Because, there's huge value in being around people that are experiencing life, living life like the way you are, right? And there's probably a community there's the whole general queer community, but then there's the bisexual community, right? So it's like, yes, we're all in this together around the not feeling like we belong in these others, but we're together in this, right? And in that feeling, and that's beautiful, and then we have that link in common. And then there's other aspects of our lives, of our places. Well, we talk about this in, Rewrite the Mother Code, right? Like expand the definition of mothering, like we all mother, so that we can break down some of those barriers. And yes, we're making different choices within that broader spectrum to both, honor our differences and honor where we're, there's qualities that are the same no matter what, and I don't know, you're just giving me so many beautiful things to think about, but I still am kind of stuck with I'm not queer enough for the queer community, right? Like I would never know that would be a thing. I wouldn't even think about that. Right. But for you to share that experience, I think is so beautiful. And to put that out there, that's something you wrestle with, and that's, unique to, your experience, that I feel grateful to and honored to have you share it. And kind of like going back to the beginning, right? If you kind of kept that inside, there'd be a whole aspect of you that I wouldn't know fully, and be able to be on the journey with you in it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. There are a couple things I want to say to that. The first one is to respond to the most recent thing you just said, which is that, thank you for sharing. I think I want to underline that sharing who you authentically are is a gift to those who want to know you. Because if you can't, you are shedding this safety. With every piece of authenticity and every more vulnerable that you get with yourself, you're shedding what you know, and you're stepping into a more secure life, because it's founded in this authenticity, because it's not sustainable to never be yourself. Like those walls are going to crumble no matter what. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. And then the second thing I wanted to say is just related to how to find community, because I have found other people who identify as bisexual. My last relationship was really open to it, and it has allowed me to find partners that more allow me to be fully myself, even as I'm committed to them. It's been kind of amazing, actually. And I think social media has been really helpful. When I came out, I was like 19, and that was, 8 years ago. And it was around, obviously, but it wasn't like as big as it is today. And now, there's sub communities and just in everywhere, all over the internet. And I have found other people who identify as bisexual on my social media accounts. I came out maybe like 3 or 4 years ago publicly. So that my personal journey had already been going on for a few years at that point, but I came out publicly like maybe 4 years ago. And I got messages from people who said, I've been struggling with my sexuality, and, I just thank you for sharing this, and I really want to connect. So that was when I was coming out. People were reaching out to me saying that they connected. And now that I'm publicly out, I have found my community, and in real life. Like once you open up the doors, it's so hard to see when you're in it because you don't know anything else. But I have seen it now. is how many doors there are open for people who are brave enough to walk through them, and the doors that appear. Like they're probably not in front of you yet. It's not that you're like making the choice not to go through them. They just haven't appeared yet, but they will if you are brave enough to be yourself. So yeah, those were just the two thoughts that came to mind as I'm reflecting on, because I do feel that way where I'm like, I'm not gay enough for this. I'm not straight enough for this. But as I'm reflecting back, like I have found community of people who understand and who get it, and who maybe aren't as publicly open as I am, but they are open with me and we can resonate together. So that has been really beautiful. And I'm grateful that I just got to reflect on that.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think you're underlining it so poignantly and beautifully, Nora. And I hope it isn't a leap, but for some reason, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, I love that how it was so different like 8 years ago, right? And I'm thinking about it even, I had an awareness of the Gay Pride parade in Chicago, but that was about as far as like the pride aspect. And, it was starting to like build. And now, we celebrate a month of awareness, toward it, and raising our awareness and, broadening the sphere and everything that you're talking about. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I'm wondering what it means to you, and, what does Pride Month mean to you specifically? I'm curious.
Yeah. I think it's so beautiful. The fact that I am able to have this conversation with you right here, right now, is not just because I have self-parented. That is a big part of it. But I am like riding the coattails of so many fighters who have come before me and who have fought for my ability to talk to you as an openly bisexual person who's not afraid of job retribution. That is a gift. And this month is a reminder of that, of the labor and hard work that has gone into fighting for these rights for everyone who identifies as part of the queer community, which is so much more than anyone realizes. Like we hear the stats of like, it's 4% of the population, but that's millions and millions of people who identify. And I think it's also probably grossly underestimated, if I'm being honest, people who identify as some sort of the spectrum. And I think June is just such a beautiful testament to A, how far we've come, and B, how far we have yet to go. And so interesting, like the layers of privilege, right? And the intersectionality, like as a white woman, like I do enjoy other privileges that I am acutely aware of in this month as I'm like part of this greater community, and I'm celebrating my ability to be myself and honor like everything that's happening and the journey that's gone into coming here, and how much I need to be there for other people who are part of this community and how far the fight is yet to go. And so I love June. It's an amazing month. It's a celebratory month. It's a month for people who actually recognize how prevalent like we are, to be honest. It's very heartwarming. Like obviously rainbows are really fun, but it's much deeper than that. For me, it's a chance to like really be myself and truly be an ally to queer folk who don't feel as safe as I do to be themselves, because I think that that's something that June reminds all of us, is that everyone deserves to feel like they can be themselves. And not everyone enjoys that privilege still now, right? So
totally,
it's a beautiful month, and it also reminds me how much work we have left to go,
Yeah, I've been thinking about that in my own, awareness this month of, and you brought to light, I think, a couple important points, right? That even within, there's a continuum of like the fears, we've spent a lot of time, and it was of course, a real and important fear of what would happen when you shared with your parents. But beyond that, like living into it in a world that isn't, in a culture that isn't accepting. And to be grateful, like you said, for those that have, paid a very huge price, for that, for these freedoms that, are more prevalent or, are more, but we're not anywhere close, to where we need to be in acceptance and awareness. And even what you said, we all lose by narrowing our sphere or our scope, right? Like the world loses by anywhere where we're putting limitations on who we are, and our full expression of ourselves. And I feel really sad about that, and of course I could, look at it personally, but this is the global impact, right? The like impact. And I think we need to hold that vision of what is possible and what we're, that limited thinking, that limited way of being is the cost of that, to us and as a force to help us, keep fighting for more and more acceptance, more and more, openness on both sides and from everyone, where one day it isn't like incumbent, on a person to feel like they have to put relationships, their life, like every layer that you're talking about at risk at that level to show who they are. So I think it's really big.
You just nailed it, right? Why should we have to sacrifice other pieces core to our living and our self? Why should we sacrifice that to be who we are? Like you just nailed it. And that's the fact. And you said something earlier too, of like belonging as a choice. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning of this conversation too, of the fear of, it felt like I was losing an identity, not gaining one, because identities and labels and whatever, while they're just words at the end of the day, they hold a lot of power and they're super powerful and can feel limiting if you're in that mindset. So with that in mind, and with what you said in mind of like, why should sexuality, gender, what have you, impact your ability to belong? Both are true because identities matter. People care about that. People cling on to different identities that they hold, and they say, anyone who's not this is not part of me. And I think we're stepping into this new age, which is really exciting and scary because globally we're stepping away from the safety. So the same pain that I was feeling when I was coming out, we're feeling on a global scale. And I get that. Actually, I just put that together. And I think that is probably what's happening, is we as a global community are putting behind us what we know to be safe. But the ironic part is that exactly what you said. If we don't show up as authentically ourselves, we all lose. It's actually the most dangerous thing we can do. I mean, look at the suicide rate in the queer community. Like companies with more queer folk have a better bottom line. Like there are so many reasons, if you want me to give them to you, that it's actually more dangerous to not be ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's like, so that's that, but that's our logical brain, and our emotional brain is like, even if it's worse, it's what I know, and that's better.
Yes.
And that's so interesting. And I think we're in this global moment of, hopefully we're stepping into this new paradigm of what could be, but it will require a lot of shedding, a lot of collective shedding.
Wow. Wow, Nora, so it's also big and beautiful and yay, and importance in
paint some rainbows.
Yes. And, as I was starting to say, I think you underlined it, but, I'm also want to underline, the belonging's a choice, the choosing to put myself out there, just, knowing that there's dangers, both, personally, relationship wise, but also in the world, as a person. But I have a responsibility, as a straight, white, privileged woman to do my own work. I'm just going to say this, full transparency. Like, I don't know the history of Pride Month. Like, there's just so much I can just, don't have to think about, or take responsibility for. But as a citizen, as a human on this planet, I do, we do have, I feel, even more so called to like my responsibility in broadening my acceptance, broadening, my sphere, my thinking. Cause of course I could sit there and think like, well, I don't have any problem with that. Like it's great or whatever, but I'm sure there's a lot going on in there that is worth exploring. And so I can be that much more of an advocate, accepting, and helping create an environment of acceptance. And yes, I look at this through the Rewrite the Mother Code lens, for sure. But in that, looking at like accepting, women in all their choices in the mothering realm. Well, this is just like that, right? Like I have to be with myself when someone's making a choice that I don't either understand or I don't overtly agree with. I mean, whatever comes up, that's my responsibility also, to fully unpack and look at like, what's my wiring around? Wow, that's interesting. Why do I have that reaction? And I know for me, it's a call to action, for myself. And I intend it to be, and choose it to be and want to be. So that's, if I didn't know you, if we hadn't had this conversation, I wouldn't have, had these realizations and gotten to these levels for myself. So I'm hugely grateful for your willingness.
Thank you. Couple things. The first is feelings aren't a choice, but what you do with them are. So not having this shame, trying to express self-compassion and self-love to whatever comes up, because it's just our wiring. We're all swimming in this, frankly, homophobic water. All of us. Even that's why self-internalized phobia is a real thing because we're all in this water. And so identifying what those feelings are and identifying what that wiring is so that you can make a more conscious choice, I think is beautiful what you just said. And thank you for saying that, because it's interesting as you're talking, I'm recognizing, I'm like, who am I to even be talking about this topic? Like, I'm just bi. Like, I'm not, again, like these self-limiting of like, I'm not queer enough.
Amazing. Yeah.
It really is how ingrained these are. And I'll share some resources. We can put them in the show notes.
Please.
Yeah. It's interesting. This has been a really interesting conversation and reflecting on it. And I just think June is such an amazing month for all of us to step into a more conscious awareness of what the world could look like. And I loved this conversation.
That's what I'm so excited about. Like, I feel like it's, opened up a space again of like, I mean, both, angry, upset, whatever, anywhere we're oppressing or holding, ourselves in any way, based on the prevailing culture. And then, but also so hopeful and exciting, and who knows, like the creativity, the energy, the possibility. I don't have like explicit pictures of it. It's more just a feeling, like, and I don't know, for me, I guess that's how I'm going to connect to the rainbows. I've never really like thought about why that symbol or what it means. And I'll look into that too. But for me, it's like, that's the image or picture I have of, full acceptance of the queer community, of what the possibility is, and they're there, we can't see them or we're hiding them. And like the thought of like never seeing a rainbow and being, I don't know, I'm just kind of like going off on it, but it's my gosh. Yeah. Both the sadness again, right? Like, what if rainbows weren't around?
How great the world would be. Yeah. It is. Yeah. I mean, the more you know, the more you know, you don't know. The more you know, the less you know. Right. And I think these conversations just bring up so much excitement and fear, but it's the same neurological reaction, excitement and fear. So leaning into choosing to believe the optimistic perspective is the choice that we all have. And I'm excited that we get to have a Pride again this year, because it was kind of canceled on us last year.
Yeah. No kidding. But it's funny because even though it was like, I think there was certain ways like more awareness was raised by it being different. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. But anyway, thank you, Nora. Thank you so, so much. I know this is the start of a conversation and we're scratching the surface, but it's an important one. It's so important to wherever we're talking about it and initiating conversations and creating them and broadening community overall, I think is a beautiful thing. So can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Gertrude. This has been really fun. What a fun way to start the day.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.